Awesome is the only word that even begins to describe our Laredo Bowies. Each features a 10.5-inch long blade made of either SK5 high carbon or VG1 Sanmai 3, and both come with a fully sharpened false edge, brass guard, and traditional coffin-shaped handle. To keep your Laredos safely at your side and ready for instant use, they each come with a traditional thick leather scabbard.
So, I'm carrying a Sanmai Laredo Bowie. Yes. This is made in Japan. It has the black micarta handle, the VG1 Sanmai blade, so it's got a hard center at about 59 and spring steel sides at about 54, 55 RC. So the reason I made this is when I tested the prototypes, they were damn near unbreakable. We put them in a vise and torture test them like I don't even want to say. And it held up and I said, that knife is too good, I have to put it in production. So that was the impetus to make that knife.
Something I've always appreciated about your Bowies, almost all of them, is that the swedges come to a sort of a zero ground edge. It's oblique. It's not a cheese slicing edge, but for a back cut or any sort of strike using it, you're going to get a tear, gouge, gash. You know, it's going to be nasty on the back cut and that sort of reverse Bowie knife fighting that.
Well, here's the problem with making the false edge too sharp. When I make it really sharp, right, then I thin the point out too much. So then I'm worried about the point bending or breaking. We did an experiment in the 80s, and if you break even, it starts at about 3/16 of an inch. You break 3/16 off the tip of your knife, and your stabbing power goes in half or less. It makes a big difference to break the tip off your knife. That's why people should use a tanto, especially a cold steel tanto, if they have any hard use or any combat in mind, because your tip can run into all kinds of things on an opponent, on his body turnout rig, whatever. You know, he has magazines, he has radios, he has stuff all over the spot, and your stab can impact something that could blunt or break your tip. So your tip's really important. So when I make too sharp of a false edge, then I imperil the strength and integrity of the tip. But what I try to do is to get it cut all the way through. We call it cut all the way through down to a zero edge. And with that, when you do your back cut, especially on exposed fingers, you'll chop through to the bone. And if you have a glove or something on, you'll break because it concentrates the force more in that narrow area, so you can break the metacarpals in the hand, especially the thumb or the fingers. So it's a great change up. I didn't use it a lot until Keating's influence on me. And now it's a part of all my Bowie knife sparring. It's a great change up. It also allows you to avoid a cut at this hand by lifting your elbow and turning your wrist over. And so you can make that back cut as you vacate your space. You can engage with that part as it's an evasion and a hit at the same time. And it's a nice change up stroke. Constantly, people aren't always aware of it. So. Yeah. I'm a fan of the back cut. It's one thing I don't like about a tanto. It doesn't have one, but it has a lot of other advantages. I mean,
one of the best characteristics of our Laredo Bowie is it has a truly sharp false edge. There isn't any production Bowie knife that has a sharp false edge, and I'll bet there's only a handful of custom knife makers that can make a Bowie knife with a truly sharp false edge. This false edge will cut you. Most won't. One of the big advantages with a Bowie knife with a false edge is as a change-up stroke, you can use a back cut. If I constantly move my blade the same way, people will cue on that. Someone cuts at my hand, I can move my hand up and down. I braid their stroke and my back cut comes in. Watch what it does to this piece of meat. Look at that. Look at that little dig right there. How'd you like that to be your forearm or the back of your hand or your thumb? Your thumb would be dangling if I hit you with a back cut like that.
I've been studying Bowie knives since 1985. That's 20 years now. I designed our Laredo Bowie that you see right here to be the ultimate fighting Bowie. It's a terrific compromise as far as knives go between cutting, slashing, chopping, and stabbing power. It stabs like the finest double-edged dagger. It's got a narrow, fairly narrow point with a false edge that's sharpened on the top, so it glides effortlessly through even the toughest materials. It's got a wide blade that's about 1.5 inches wide. It's 5/16 inch thick at the spine. So it's very strong and it has really good chopping and shearing power. But the balance is right here next to the guard. It's only about 3/4 to an inch in front of the guard. So it's extremely lively and facile and alive, if you will, in your hand. This knife can move almost on its own volition. It's a very, very fast knife. And again, it has a sharpened false edge on the top, so I can use it with a back cut. A terrific knife, and I think you'll really, really be pleased to be the owner of a Laredo Bowie.
This is my personal knife. This is the San Mai version, and of all the cold steel weapons, the Laredo Bowie and the 5.5 inch Vaquero with the serrated edge, those are my two most favorite knives. This knife comes from cold steel with a Securex sheath. It's a really badass sheath. The Laredos all come with this black micarta or G10 handle. Different versions have had both, but I think right now they might be using actually black G10 for the handle, and it's pretty nicely polished. I just saw the 3V version yesterday for the first time, and I'm excited. I don't get very excited about knives very much, but I am so pleased. I want to say again how pleased I am with how good the 3V knives came out. Our manufacturer, I started this 3 years ago working with this guy, and it came to fruition finally. It's a pain in the ass to make 3V products perfectly, and I think Cold Steel knocked it out of the park. So I'm really excited about their new stuff, but let me get into and tell you why I carry the Laredo. First of all, it has this 10.5 inch long blade. That gives me tremendous reach. The blade is about 1.5 inches wide. It's 5/16 thick at the spine. It has a distal taper that only starts here at the false edge. So it's very, very stiff. You've got all that meat in the spine to make that blade super stiff. And then you've got the false edge here. And it's all the way cut through. It's not shaving sharp, but it's sharp enough that when I back cut with it, your fingers are gonna flop. Your thumb's gonna hang. I'm gonna break the metacarpals in the back of your hand. And it's got a cute, but pretty darn strong point. It's very difficult to break that point unless you're doing it deliberately. This isn't for going out and hacking down the cherry tree in your backyard that was planted in your great granddad's day that's been dead for 20 years, that weighs 6 tons or 10 tons, a root system 50 feet long, and it's an immovable object. Don't go out there and take your precious Bowie knife and try to hack that tree down. This isn't designed for batoning. You don't take this out and split wood with it like that and beat the crap out of it. Yeah, will it take it? Yes, but it's not good for it, and it's not designed for it. This is designed for one thing, and that's as a fighter. Yeah, you can put it into use in an emergency as a survival knife or an outdoor knife, but that's its long suit. It's a fighter first and a tool second. Okay, get that. It's got a really nice curve here, but it's pretty straight here. So it's useful for chopping, good for slashing, and awesome for piercing. Like Bill Bagwell says, a Bowie knife has to chop like a cleaver, cut like the very best knife, and stab like the best double-edged dagger. And the Laredo fills all those functions perfectly. It has a double quillion guard to protect your fingers, to keep your hand from sliding forward onto that blade. Its balance point is right here. There, I got it the first time. It's about 1.25 inches to 1 3/8 in front of the guard, so it's blade heavy, but not so blade heavy that it isn't facile in your hand. This thing moves effortlessly for me. For my finger, wrist, hand, forearm strength, this is a really good balance. The Natchez at 21 ounces is a tad heavier than this, about 5 ounces heavier, and I find that as much as I like it, it's a little ponderous for me compared to this Laredo. This fits my stature and strength really well. I really can't say enough about how much I like this knife. I guess the best as a testament that I can give it is this is the knife that I carry every day.
Texas.
the Bowie knife, and from there, it went around the world and became a knife institution. Everybody in the world's heard about a Bowie knife. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Most Bowie knives got a 10-inch to 12-inch blade. They have a long, narrow point like this, a flip point, if you will, so they're pointy. They're usually sharpened on this back edge right here. They're sharpened there. And bless their heart, they all have a guard. And the guard is one of the things that sets a Bowie knife apart from everything else. See that lock? Everyone see that? I'll move around. When he cuts at me, I can lock him on my guard right there for a microsecond and dispel him if I want to. I can pick him up and move him. I can pick him up and move him off and turn him around. That guard allows me to do things that I couldn't do if it wasn't there. So the guard on a Bowie knife is one of the most essential attributes that it has. And all this came from Texas, which we thank all the Texans for. And you guys are the ones that spread it around the world. So now I'm going to show you how you can use the Bowie knife. First of all, it's a premier stabber. And what's nice about a Bowie knife with the blade is what most people don't realize is I can fight for my wrist. When I have a shorter knife, like this, if I have a Tamto, this has got a 7-inch blade, no guard. When he cuts or stabs at me, I have to move. I have to move my whole body and I have to angle a lot. Because I have no guard. Even though I parried there, a little bit came through and hit the tip of my thumb. And that was so fast you guys couldn't see it, but I felt it. I picked it up on my blade, but a little bit of that tip came through and hit me. So it's much harder to use a shorter knife. But when I have a Bowie, I can just turn my wrist and move him out of the way. Also, it's strong enough that I can beat his knife right out of his hand sometimes. No one wants to get close. You see that? Ron and I have a lot of respect for each other. It's putting your hand into a whirling blender. If you don't have two knives, most people don't know how to fight with two knives. It takes a lot of coordination. Because he'll feed you with one and cut you with the other one. So it all has to come out of conditioned reflex. One of my inspirations in my martial careers, Guru Dan Santo. And he said the muscles get brains of their own. As you train incessantly, God made us in such a wonderful way. Your subconscious mind directs your muscles to operate without almost any thought at all. I don't have to think we need to do that. It just happens. It just happens. Whatever he does. I didn't do any of those. I picked up all of those. They were not rehearsed. Those aren't coached. I just went in there and my conditioned reflex kicks those legs in. There I got a cut. I saw in a microsecond, he went up, he went down. When he went up, I went outside and I cut just the outside of his arm here, my blade. It comes out of thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of knife fights. So the Bowie knife is a quintessential American fighting knife. Step on up. We got a whole bunch of them here. We'd like to say we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Sometimes I can. The optimal thing is for me to countercut it like this, like that. The less optimal is to block. So I just block them like that. Now I stop the cut, but I may or may not have done any damage. We don't know because if I don't pull, it may not cut. So I stop this, I touch that, or I have to step in. Or I have to step in. So, blocking is good. It's better to countercut. So I'd rather do this than that. Sometimes you have to pick up the blade, especially if he's close. If he's close to me, stabbing here. If I go with his hands, he's already hit me. Stick me. I do that, he's already stuck me. Close range, he's already stuck me. So close range, I have to pick him up on the blade. Or if I go to his hand, I have to make sure I vacate that space. So that takes a lot more time. So
Oftentimes, I'll just pick up his blade. That's why you have to have a strong knife. If your knife is sharp, you can't bully him around like you're supposed to be able to Bowie knife. A Bowie knife is a bully. This knife. Because it usually has a spine a quarter, 5/6 inches, 8 inches thick. So that thick spine, I can bully him quite a bit. Beat his blade off the hand. So I keep him up here and cut his hand right away. It's best, when you get this in Filipino martial arts, it's best to take the knife out of his hand before you try to stab him. This is fought with her. Because I don't know what that other knife's hand's going to do. I come in and he countercuts him. I countercuts his hand. Right after I hit him, I cut something. I don't like any of those options. So to get a stab in and out takes lots of work. I have to watch exactly the moment in time safe. Quite often it's not safe. There are problems. But you see me when I touch him, I'm not taking one step. I take 2, 3, 4 steps away. Because he'll lean. So I have to vacate that space. And you use smooth motions. You notice you slide around. That's to keep your balance. And to be smooth. Always in motion. It takes a lot of energy.
Not talking, we're going to do the knife. The knife, this is Lynn Thompson, the owner, operator of Cold Steel. And I'd like to, I'm actually going to turn it over to him. There's a lot of things that I thought I knew about the Bowie, and he actually showed me so much more with it, and I really appreciate where he's gone with it. It's not just your average knife. When I've sparred with other knives, I've gotten away with more with this knife as a result of some of the things that I've kind of picked up from Lynn. So go with it, Lynn.
Okay, the Bowie knife, like this Laredo trainer we're using here, has a 10.5-inch blade, a fairly acute point. It's a fairly wide blade also, so it shears, so you can chop with it, it slashes well, and it stabs well. And most importantly, it has this double guard. And those quillions, these projections here, allow me to catch incoming knife blades or even sword blades. Any weapon I can catch, and if it runs down my blade that locks on that guard, momentarily I can push it off and countercut. So there's a huge advantage. And the secondary advantage is, because of that guard, instead of moving my arm, I can move my wrist. Your wrist is much faster. So I don't have to move my whole arm to respond. I just move my wrist out and pick it up. So all of this is happening very quickly, but you'll learn how to maneuver that knife. And I picked all those up on my blade, and I didn't get cut one time. Not one thing ricocheted from the blade up into my hand. So it makes it ever so much faster to respond to somebody's attack when you have a Bowie with a proper double guard. When you stab me in the face, I can just move my wrist a tiny bit. And because my wrist, I have so much leverage with this, I can lock out. So that's, in a nutshell, very quickly, all the advantages that you get with a Bowie knife. Look into it.
Yeah, now to finish it up real quick, for the Filipino martial artists, like the whole panipas thing where you'll slide down, and if he didn't have the guard, like if I get him to block, and if I slide down, I usually get that cut. That guard has put my hit ratio down so much. And sparring with aluminum, make sure you know what you're doing before you do it, because really you can get messed up pretty bad. Foam trainers are good, but they still don't give you the same feeling respect factor as aluminum. So homework today is examine that guard, play with it, be safe, and I'm not wearing eye gear. You should.
My first kill with a Bowie knife.
Versus a small sword. Most people have no idea how hard it is to oppose something this long to something that short. He was eventually able to close with me and stab me directly in the chest. And he parried every single attack I threw at his face. You're too good a friend for me to not try to stab you in the face. That's what our training is for here at Cold Steel.
We always do what's hard. If you always do what's really hard or uncomfortable for you, you have big success in a fight.